Welcome to my channel. My name is
The
Afola.
ancient concrete that gets stronger with age. What if I told you that some concrete built nearly 2,000 years ago can actually repair certain cracks by itself? No modern cement factory, no steel reinforcement, no advanced laboratories. Yet some Roman structures have survived for centuries while exposed to earthquakes, rain, seawater, and relentless weather. And now scientists believe they may finally understand one of the secrets behind it. But here's the strange part. The Romans didn't know the chemistry we know today. So how did they create a material that modern scientists are still trying to understand? To answer that, we have to go back almost 2,000 years. Ancient Rome was one of the greatest engineering civilizations in history. The Romans built enormous roads, bridges, aqueducts, baths, temples, harbors, and domes. And behind many of these structures was a remarkable material called Roman concrete, known as opus caementicium. It wasn't identical to modern concrete. Instead, Roman builders commonly combined lime, water, volcanic ash, and pieces of stone or other aggregate. One of their most important ingredients was a volcanic material known as pozzolana. Volcanic ash might sound ordinary, but when combined with lime and water, it could trigger chemical reactions that created strong cementitious materials. And this was already an incredible discovery. But the real mystery appears when we look at what happened hundreds of years later. Concrete normally has a major weakness. It cracks. Temperature changes can cause expansion and contraction. Water can enter the cracks. Chemical reactions can weaken the material. And over time, those tiny cracks can become much larger problems. But when scientists examined some Roman concrete under microscopes, they found something unexpected. Tiny light-colored mineral features were embedded throughout the material. For years, these features were sometimes interpreted as evidence of poor mixing, but researchers began asking a different question. What if those strange lime-rich features were actually part of the secret? That question changed the way scientists looked at Roman concrete. Research suggests that some Roman builders may have used a technique known as hot mixing, involving quicklime. When quicklime comes into contact with water, it releases significant heat. That heat can change the chemical environment inside the concrete as it forms. And that matters because the resulting material can contain highly reactive lime-rich structures. Now imagine a crack forming inside the concrete centuries later. Rainwater or groundwater enters the crack. Instead of simply making the problem worse, the water can interact with reactive materials inside the concrete. Under the right conditions, chemical reactions can produce new mineral material. That material can partially fill the crack. In simple terms, the concrete can heal some damage through chemical reactions. But there's an important warning. Roman concrete isn't literally alive. It doesn't repair every crack. And scientists aren't claiming that every Roman structure automatically becomes stronger with age. The behavior depends on the exact materials, mixture, environment, and conditions. Still, the discovery is extraordinary, because it suggests that some Roman concrete wasn't simply designed to survive. Its chemistry could continue changing long after construction. And nowhere is this more fascinating than in ancient Roman structures exposed to seawater. Think about that. Seawater is normally a major enemy of infrastructure. It can accelerate deterioration and cause serious problems for modern structures. Yet some ancient Roman marine concrete has survived for centuries in the harsh environment of the Mediterranean. One famous area is around the Bay of Naples, where ancient Roman harbor structures still exist underwater. Scientists studying these materials have found complex mineral formations created through interactions between the concrete and seawater. Instead of seawater simply destroying the material, it could participate in chemical processes that produce new minerals. This doesn't mean seawater made Roman concrete invincible. It didn't. But it shows something remarkable. The environment wasn't always working against the material. In some cases, the environment became part of the chemistry that helped the structure survive. And that raises an obvious question. If Roman concrete was so durable, why don't we simply copy it? The answer is surprisingly complicated. Modern concrete is designed for completely different purposes. Today's construction industry needs materials that can be produced rapidly, consistently, and on an enormous scale. Modern buildings also rely heavily on steel reinforcement and highly controlled engineering specifications. Roman concrete wasn't one universal recipe either. Ancient builders used different materials depending on where they lived and what resources were available. So there isn't a single secret Roman recipe that can simply replace modern concrete. But scientists aren't necessarily trying to copy the Romans exactly. They're trying to understand the principles. What if modern concrete could be engineered to seal certain cracks? What if structures could last longer before major repairs were necessary? What if roads, bridges, seawalls, and other infrastructure could become more durable? That could have enormous consequences. Concrete is one of the most widely used construction materials on Earth, and producing cement has a significant environmental impact. If structures lasted longer, society could potentially reduce some of the resources and energy required to repair and replace them. So an ancient Roman construction technique could potentially inspire modern materials designed for the future. But there's another question that's even more fascinating. Did the Romans actually understand what they were doing? Probably not in the way a modern chemist would. They didn't understand atoms. They didn't have modern chemistry. They couldn't examine their materials with electron microscopes. They couldn't identify microscopic minerals using modern laboratory equipment. Instead, Roman builders learned through observation and experience. They knew which volcanic materials worked. They knew which mixtures produced durable structures. They saw which buildings survived. And that knowledge was passed down through generations. In other words, the Romans may not have understood the chemistry behind their materials, but they understood something just as valuable: what worked. And practical knowledge can sometimes survive for centuries, even when the scientific explanation is forgotten. One of the greatest examples is the Pantheon in Rome. Its enormous concrete dome was completed nearly 2,000 years ago, and remarkably, it remains standing today. The dome wasn't simply made massive and heavy. Roman engineers carefully changed the materials throughout its structure. The lower portions needed greater strength. Higher sections could use lighter materials. The geometry itself helped distribute the forces. So the secret wasn't just the concrete. It was the combination of materials, engineering, geometry, and construction technique. And that is something we sometimes miss when we talk about ancient technology. The Romans weren't using primitive versions of modern engineering. They were solving problems using the knowledge available to them. Their methods were different, their materials were different, their objectives were sometimes different. But their results could be extraordinary. Today, scientists can examine Roman concrete at a microscopic level. They can identify minerals, they can analyze chemical reactions, they can study how seawater interacted with ancient structures, and they can compare ancient materials with modern concrete. Every discovery gives researchers another piece of the puzzle. But there is something almost incredible about the fact that we're still learning from these structures after nearly 2,000 years. Think about what those walls have witnessed: Roman emperors, wars, political revolutions, the fall of an empire, centuries of changing civilizations. And through all of it, parts of those structures remained. The concrete didn't need to be perfect, it simply needed to survive. And that's perhaps the greatest lesson hidden inside Roman engineering. The Romans didn't create an immortal material. They created materials and structures that were remarkably well adapted to their environment. Some could undergo chemical changes that helped preserve them. Some interacted with seawater in unexpected ways. And some survived long enough for modern science to finally ask, why? The answer isn't magic. It isn't that ancient Romans possessed technology more advanced than ours. And it isn't that Roman concrete can never fail. The truth is more interesting. Ancient builders developed materials through centuries of experimentation, and some of those materials possessed chemical behaviors that modern researchers are only now fully investigating. Nearly 2,000 years ago, Roman builders mixed volcanic ash, lime, water, and stone. Today, scientists are putting those ancient materials under microscopes and using modern chemistry to understand what happened inside them. And perhaps the most remarkable thing is this: the Romans built for their world, but their discoveries may help us build for ours. If you enjoyed this story, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next incredible story from history, science, and the mysteries of our world. Because the past may still be holding answers to problems we're trying to solve today.
Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to my channel.